Well, this is going to be a fun one. I am so excited. I'm talking to my friend Ian, who is living the life that most of us would love to live. And I mean, it's just about freedom, and he is just an amazing leader. I'm talking to him right now in his camper, and I'm like, Ian, what are you doing? He's like, well, we just go hang out in the camper every week. We do this, my wife and I, and go where we want to go, do what we want to do. And Ian, you're my hero. Welcome.
well, well, thank you so much, Larry. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here. And everyone should go get a camper, man. It really is freeing.
I'm loving it. I can, for those of you that aren't on YouTube that are listening, I'm looking at him, and he's just up in this camper, and it looks so cool. And it's like I could just go where I want, and I have a place to stay. I can hang out. It's the life. And Ian, so I guess the word is you're intentional about being unintentional. Maybe, I don't know.
That's a good way to put it. I've found that if we can simplify certain areas of our life, other areas become better. So by not having a huge space to even move around in, much less keep clean, and not having TVs and unlimited things and all of that, and being intentional around cleaning a space, that opens the door for us to be more creative and be more kind. And where you live out of a van, not in a van. So I'm in the van because we're doing this call and we're doing the podcast, but usually we're out and we're in nature and doing things and seeing things and exploring new places. And it's just it creates a deeper relationship between Carrie and I every day that we're in here. So wouldn't give it up for the world.
Well, I'm so jealous, and I'm proud of you for doing that. And as we talked about in the intro, you're a leader who thinks differently, and you've already done some incredible things. And I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about not what so much you've accomplished in your leadership journey, maybe not so much about your business, but about you and how you garnered those leadership characteristics, those things that make you who you are, it makes Ian who he is. So let's go back. Let's take a little journey back. And Ian is around 8 years old. And tell us, where is he? Where are you at 8? And what's a day in the life of Ian like as an 8-year-old?
Yeah. So when I was 8, I grew up in a healthcare household. Healthcare was the family business. So my dad was a family practitioner, which is a specialty just like a cardiologist or a surgeon, but it's focused on the wellness of the family and providing end-to-end care. And he was one of 4 partners in a little small country office that was the second best office in the state, and the first best office was a 150 provider monstrosity health system. So it was those big guys with their unlimited budget, and then these little itty bitty 4 doctors in Holt, Michigan, who were really focused on quality care. So because of that, my dad was the president and the CEO of that corporation. He was gone most days before I woke up and didn't come home most days before I went to bed. And my mom was a neonatal intensive care nurse, which the neonatal intensive care unit, the ICU is where really, really sick people go. The neonatal intensive care unit is where really, really sick brand new babies go. And more often than not, when you go into the NICU, you usually don't come out in that sort of a scenario. So my mom spent her career doing that until she got really, really sick. Which 8-year-old Ian, my mom would have been in the throes of dealing with unmitigated, uncontrolled lupus, plus really bad arthritis, plus other stuff. So she couldn't go out in the sun. She didn't really go many places. So I wasn't on many sports teams because my dad wasn't there. My mom couldn't go out to games. So there wasn't a lot of sport or team activity. And I was a bit of a loner, and really got pushed around and bullied a lot when I was a kid. I got my rear end stomped all the way up through probably about sophomore, junior year in high school when I got bigger. And once you get bigger, then like that sort of activity stops. And there wasn't really this is, I mean, we're going into ancient history now, but when I was growing up, there wasn't some of that intentionality around children's mental
Right.
health and creating
No.
a safe space. This was pre Columbine and pre a lot of that other attention in some of the areas that have caused some pretty big rifts in America. So I was just one of those faceless numbers who kind of was on the short end of the proverbial stick there. So if I was 8, I was hiding on the playground and trying to get through school and trying to make friends and failing and not really knowing how to talk to people and not knowing really how to open up or be friends or interact. So like school was, before college, school was kind of a lonely, sad place
Mm.
for me, and that's kind of the history in the life of Ian was trying to please a father who didn't uh well, my father's dead, so I don't really like to speak ill, but my father was a hard man to please and an easy man to disappoint, and he never hid either. And so in general, I was chasing after approval that wasn't really mine to gain. So
Wow.
that's
That is that's an incredibly insightful statement, in that I wonder how many people are right there even right now, and your willingness to share that vulnerability is amazing. Thank you for being so authentic and honest about who you were and what you were trying to do, and that was really not even attainable, but it had to be difficult as you moved through these years. Let's say you're up into before you got big, let's say you're at 11, 12, 13. What's going on then?
yeah. That's middle school leading into high school. That's I started getting into a lot of trouble. I was getting into a lot of fights, losing more than I won, starting to push back. I mean, you start going through the mental and physical changes of your brain developing as a young man. That's testosterone hitting, that's puberty, that's all that sort of stuff going through. Life was confusing. I wasn't paying attention in school. I was really not putting forward effort in school. So C's and D's in courses instead of the A's and B's that should be attainable with a bit of time, skill, and effort. And I remember 8th grade, near the end of the term, they pretty much said, look, you can graduate, but why don't you not come back for the last couple of weeks? Because there was just a lot of tension and again, just getting in a lot of schoolyard scrapes and stuff. And looking back at it, it's kind of what were you doing? And how much time did you waste and how much energy did you throw away? And even through freshman year, I kind of really started messing around in high school, and I don't know when it hit. It might have been a school teacher. Like there was a gentleman in high school named Mr. Backus, who was a computer science, like programming teacher. Went through a couple of courses there, and he said, hey, you could do this. This could be kind of a path forward to you. I remember when I was 15 or 14, I was down in my dad's basement at his practice installing one of the first health records off of old floppy drives on his system. And I started getting interested in computers. And that's kind of, I guess you get that, it's a light bulb or an aha or something where, hey, I need to start doing something. And school suddenly became dramatically important in my eyes. It became important to show up and get good grades. I wanted to try to do better.
Mm.
And so I guess that would be probably a turning of a corner. On the same token, though, in a social part of the story, I really started falling in with the wrong crowd. So while I was trying to do better in school, I was staying out late. I was partying. I picked up smoking cigarettes at 14, a terrible habit. And thankfully have been broken of for a long time, but started smoking early, started drinking early, started going to parties early. Just doing a lot of socially self-destructive things, looking for acceptance. And that's a crowd that,
Mm,
I guess, looking at it reflectively, it's easy to
mhm.
fall in with a partying crowd, because when everyone's partying, everyone's your best friend, and it's easy to feel popular and easy to feel desired as a friend, as a person, as a human, as an individual. It's easy to feel that need for acceptance. And as a outcast for all of my childhood years, that was something that was addicting, like an addictive
Sure. Yeah.
quality to try to fit in. So
Yeah.
it would have been both of those things would have been happening simultaneously around that time.
Goodness gracious. And so you're trying to figure it all out. Some light bulbs are coming on, but
Mhm.
in terms of the social, needing that social acceptance and heading in the wrong direction to get that. So it had to be a very difficult time where even I'm sure with mom and dad still having their own issues and probably not as involved at that time. And Ian, what did you, if as you think back now, think back to you look back at that freshman year, that 10th grade, ninth grade, 10th grade year, somewhere in there. What did you learn? What if you look back and go, as I think about things, here's a takeaway from that era of my life. What would that be?
uh there's a couple of different things. There's a skill. I'm such a fan of your book series, because
Mm,
I'm a big animal lover, and I love to relate things to, hey, here's this part of me that reminds me of an animal, or an animal speaks to me around that. And there's three, outside of the camel lionness of my personality type, or lion camelness really.
right.
There's three animals that really resonate, and I guess in that age, chameleon is really an
Mm,
interesting set, and that was the learning the art of fitting in. So the there's a lot of good negative lessons that are self-evident for drinking and partying, and doing all the things that accompany that, which
right.
those are easy mistakes to make. But the positive takeaway, which I'd rather focus on a positive takeaway, is that I learned how to
Yeah.
talk to people.
Wow, that's
um,
good.
I learned how to read a room, and I learned how to fit into that room in a way. And that's the chameleon part, is, hey, like, you can, that's a skill, just like doing a push-up, or going to the gym, or cooking, or whatever. You can learn that skill, and you can exercise that skill. And it made it easier to walk into a room where I didn't know anyone. I didn't feel like it was easy to beat back imposter syndrome and say, no, you belong in this room just like any other room. Go make it your room, and
Mm,
learn how to talk to people. So that was probably a big takeaway from that time. And then the other piece of it is that, and this was a lesson that unfortunately took me probably until my early 20s to learn, is that actions have consequences, and the
that's good.
consequences matter. So learning that
Yep.
if you don't show up, you don't put in the work, you don't get the grades. If you don't have the grades, you can't go to a university, you won't get a scholarship, which is where I kind of ended up. I didn't get to go to a traditional college experience, going to the dorms and all of that. When I was 18, I moved out of my parents' house because there was a lot of tension there, and worked full time from about 16 moving forward. And dove in, and went and worked at a local community college during the day, so I could afford 1 to 2 classes on a compensated or reduced fee schedule at night. And that's how I went through school. Was
Wow. So you actually put, even though, wow, you came from a family that probably had resources. What I heard you say is you worked your way through college.
Yep. Yep. I worked. It took about 5 years to get through the traditional 3-year program, because instead of doing 4 or 5 classes at a time, I would do 1 or 2. That's how many free credit hours I got from the work at the school. And then when I was done with with my 5th year, the community college I went through, Lansing Community College, had a 3+1 program. So you could get your 3 full years at the community college with their reduced tuition and accessible hours. and then you do 1 year at a private university. And so I did that final year at Northwood, and at that point I went and talked with my dad and said, "Hey, like, can you co-sign? I won't be able to get a student loan." And he said, "You've worked pretty hard these past 5 years. I'll pay for the last year." So he stepped in and used those resources so that I could have that last year of school for free, which was an amazing gift, because I didn't walking out of undergrad. I didn't have student debt. I
Wow.
walked out
Yeah.
debt free. I could take risks, and one of those risks was diving into my business a few years later that I wouldn't have been able to do if I had $2,000 or $3,000 a month of debt payments I had to service.
So how did you do in college, Ian? How
Yeah,
did that go for you?
I graduated with honors from both the community
Wow.
college and the undergrad. So it was
Unbelievable. Look at you with honors. I mean, that's amazing. What a turnaround. Why did you not give up? You're working, you're going to night school. There had to be a million other things you'd rather be doing. Why did you pursue that and stay the course?
so early on in my 20s, I was still, this is probably would have been 20 or 21. I was still in with the wrong crowd, and I made a routine amount of very, very poor decisions. And from that crowd, a couple of people got pretty hurt. A couple of people got into some significant trouble, and ended up incarcerated. And I got very, very depressed from a couple of a pretty significant physical alteration in which I got hurt,
Mm,
and didn't have a lot of friends, didn't have social support, wasn't speaking
mm,
with my mother and father at the time, and I ended up on a footbridge in Lansing at night, and attempted suicide. So it's not that I didn't give up. I did give up, and it didn't work.
mm.
And in that space, it's an interesting. This is the first time I've really talked about it in a public venue. My wife knows about it, but no one else does, except now 20,000 people. So, hello world. So when you get into that space, my experience there is it wasn't so much a feeling of helplessness, it's a feeling of acceptance. And I guess a metaphor is the easiest way for me to describe that. When your head gets into that space,
Right.
imagine that you're in a lake and you're swimming,
Yeah.
and you're out in the middle of that lake, and then suddenly you forget how to swim. So it's not like a pool where you can hop and just grab onto something and say, all right, well, I need to catch my breath. You're just bobbing up and down in the lake, and you kind of go under the lake and you push yourself back up, and you go under the lake and you push yourself back up, but you're never really comfortable. And after a while, you still don't remember how to swim, but you say, like, is this really how I want to spend the rest of my life? Is just trying to keep my head above
Mm,
water.
mm.
And all it takes is a snap moment of like no, I don't want to do that, to make a terrible mistake. And thankfully mine didn't work out. There's no lasting impact from that. No one was hurt. Um, but it it was a wake up call to say that something's gotta change, and you gotta focus down. And
We're going to stop the podcast right here for part one. I want you to think about what Ian is saying. I want you to think about where he has been, what he has been through. This is an incredible story. I want you to hear the rest of the story coming out in part two. But think about the impact that our environment has on us. Think about Ian going through his early years in elementary school, middle school, scared, hiding on the playground, being bullied. Think about his desire and drive to be accepted, and thinking maybe he had turned a corner and had began there his love for computers, but yet socially not turning a corner, and it led to devastation. It led to a suicide attempt. What a powerful story from an incredible leader who was vulnerable with us. If perhaps you are struggling, you got to know there's a rest of the story. You got to know that Ian's going to come back and tell us how he got to where he is today. So don't give up. And please stay tuned and listen to the rest of his story, because there's a rest of your story. No matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, there's a rest of your story, and you get to write that story. Ian decided he would write his script differently, and you can too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Crossing the Line. I hope that this podcast has been impactful to you. I hope it has resonated with you and reminded you that we all have choices that have consequences, and both are real. I hope that as you listen to part 2, it will encourage you to continue to cross the line to make a difference. We look forward to seeing you on part 2 of the Ian Richardson podcast.